Hi folks, it's Mike Murphy. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can turn any web page on your website into a clean Markdown file using Cloudflare Workers. I am going to add a Cloudflare worker on my brand new website, mikemurphy.ai, which is built on the Astro platform, and I am hosting my website on Cloudflare Pages. You do not need an Astro site or to be on Cloudflare Pages in order to use Cloudflare Workers. In order for any of this to work, so if you want to convert or turn any web page on your website into a Markdown file, well, you must have a Markdown file that the Cloudflare can go and get. What makes this really easy for me to do on my Astro website is because Astro uses Markdown files natively. Now, if your website's on WordPress or somewhere else where you don't use Markdown files natively, where you're going to have to make a folder and convert all of your pages or your posts to Markdown files. So you'll have the original, and then you're going to have a folder of Markdown files, and you're going to tell Cloudflare Worker to look in the folder whenever you want to convert it to a Markdown file. So it's just going to be an extra step. For me, I don't have to make any copies because all of my posts are in Markdown files already. Here is what happens. Somebody opens up a web browser, they type in mikemurphy.ai because they cannot wait to see my new website on Astro. Then they want to go check out my latest tutorials. So they click on the tutorials in the navigation bar. And then they open up my latest tutorial. This is being served in HTML. And you know that if I right click in the browser and choose View Page Source, this is the source code. This is HTML. This is not Markdown. I am going to set up a Cloudflare worker which sits in between the HTML requests and my original or my source Markdown files. And if you're not on Astro, that is going to be a folder of Markdown files that you create and point the Cloudflare worker to. Somebody opens up a tutorial and says, you know what? I really want to add this to my second brain. But wouldn't it be great if I could copy this as a Markdown file and just paste it into Obsidian? Well, all they have to do at the end of the URL is type .md. And by doing that, that wakes up the Cloudflare worker that says, oh, they don't want an HTML file, they want the Markdown file. So the Cloudflare worker goes and gets the Markdown file for that page. It strips all the front matter and formats it for a nice, clean Markdown file. So that page is no longer going to be served as HTML. It's going to be served as Markdown, which is pretty cool. Everything that I'm doing today, setting up Cloudflare Workers, is 100% free. So my website is built on Astro. It's hosted on Cloudflare. And my website is a GitHub repo. So whenever I want to publish anything to my Astro website, I just commit and push to my GitHub repo. The first thing I'm going to do is open up my Astro website. So the entire code base, I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code or VS Code. This is my entire website. The first thing I'll do in VS Code is create an empty folder called functions. Then I'm going to create a new file and name that file _middleware.js. The _middleware.js file that we're going to create, it must be named this exact same way. And then we're just going to copy and paste this long script. So the first part of the script, this detects anytime somebody enters .md at the end of a URL and taps return. Then the Cloudflare worker wakes up and says, oh, I got to go get the raw Markdown files to serve on this page instead of the HTML. Now I have to tell the Cloudflare worker what my GitHub username is, what my GitHub repo name is, and I also have to tell it the path to all of the Markdown files. The Cloudflare worker needs to know the path or the location of where the raw Markdown files are located. The fetch part of the script is pretty long, and then we go on to the part of the script where the Cloudflare worker is going to strip the front matter or clean the front matter from the raw Markdown source. The front matter is that top section of metadata that you can add to a Markdown file by just entering 3 dashes at the very top. So the Cloudflare Worker is going to strip all of that. If you're using MDX on Astro, if you're using any React components, it's going to strip all of that, just making sure that it serves a clean Markdown file or a .md file. Once I update the script with my GitHub user information and make sure the path to my Markdown files is set, all I need to do in VS Code is just commit and push to my GitHub repo. So once the build is complete, I'm then going to test it by opening up a tutorial, and at the end of the URL, I'm going to enter in .md. That's it. Tap return. Instead of serving the HTML page, the Cloudflare Worker is going to go to my GitHub repo to the path that I set. It's going to pull the Markdown files, strip it clean, and then it's going to serve me the Markdown file. Lickety split. This is my entire website locally on my MacBook Pro. So it's in a folder or a directory called Mike Murphy-AI. So I'm going to drag this folder into VS Code. A little Mac tip you might not know, I can drag it right here in Finder, right at the top here. I can just drag it right onto VS Code. So step 1, I'm going to create an empty folder called Functions. And I'm going to create that folder at the same level of the src folder. So at the root level of the directory. And then I'm going to create an empty file called _middleware.js. And that is where I'm going to paste in that entire script. In VS Code, to create a new folder, I'm just going to go to an empty space. Remember, I want it on the same level as src, so the root of the project. I'm just going to right-click any empty space and choose New Folder. And I'm going to call this folder Functions. And now I'm going to create a new file inside of the Functions folder. So with the Functions folder selected, I'm just going to right-click and choose New File. And now I'm just going to type the name. _middleware. So middleware.js. Now tap return. With the _middleware.js file selected, I'm going to go into the middle where you see the blinking cursor. I'll click and then I'm just going to paste Command V. That pastes in the entire script. If you check the description box of this tutorial, you will find a link to the post where you will find this entire script. In VS Code, whenever you see that white circle on any file, that just means there are unsaved changes. So to save it, I'm just going to press Command S. And now I just need to update a few of the variables in the script. So I need to tell the Cloudflare Worker what my GitHub username is, what the name of the GitHub repo is, the branch of the GitHub repo where my raw Markdown files are, which I'm just going to keep at main, and then I need to give it the path to where my raw Markdown files are located. This is my GitHub repo for my MikeMurphy.ai website. To get the GitHub username, you can look in the top left corner. And right next to that is the name of the GitHub repo. You'll also find it in the URL. So the first part here, this is my GitHub username. And this last part right here is the name of the repo. So I'll go back to VS Code, and I'm just going to replace this first part. I'm going to keep it in the single quotes. So my username, Mike Murphy, CO. And now my GitHub name, or the repo name, Mike Murphy AI. The branch is main, and now I need to set the content base path. Where are my raw Markdown files located? So all of the content that I post on my Astro website, they are Markdown files, and they live in this folder called src. In src, there's another folder called Content, and that is where I put all of my content or all of my posts, and they are all in this folder called Articles. And I also have my newsletter AI Unplugged, which I also want to be able to convert to Markdown. So I actually want my path to be the source and include everything in this content folder. So to get the content-based path in VS Code, all you have to do is go to the folder that you want the path. So I want to include everything in this content folder. So all I need to do is just right-click on the folder. Don't choose copy path. Choose copy relative path. And then I can just delete this, paste, Command V, and that is the correct path to my raw Markdown files. So now that we've made changes to this script, you're going to see that white circle at the top indicating that there are saved changes. So use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control S, or in VS Code, go to File and choose Save. So I just made these changes to my Astro website on my local MacBook Pro. So this is in my local project folder. Now I need to commit and push the changes to my GitHub repo. So to do that, I'm going to come over here in the left sidebar VS Code. I'm going to go to the source control icon where I see that little 1 indicating there are changes that haven't been committed or pushed. So I'll click that. Where it says middleware.js, this is the change that we made. So I'm going to come right here. I'll click the plus to change. I'm going to add a message. This is just a note to remind you of what changes you made in this version. I'm going to click this drop-down menu and choose Commit and Push. That's pushing the changes to my GitHub repo. When I push changes to my GitHub repo on Astro, you will see on Cloudflare, it automatically triggers or it starts a build process. It's basically rebuilding my Astro website with all of the changes that I made to the repo. And I can see in the history what I just did. So now I'm back on my website and we're going to test it out. I'll click on tutorials. I'm just going to open up any tutorial. Now I'm going to go to the URL. I'm going to go to the end, and it doesn't matter that the / is there. I can just type .md at the end. I'm going to cross my fingers, tap return, check it out. Instead of serving the HTML page, this is the raw Markdown file. Pretty cool. Command A to select everything. Command C to copy. I'll open up Obsidian. I have an empty document. Command V. Now I have a perfectly formatted Markdown file. So in Chrome, I'll just go to File, Save Page As, name it anything you want. And at the end, instead of .txt, just change it to .md. You're going to get a warning. Are you sure you want to use MD? Yes, I do. And there's the file saved to my desktop. And if I double click it, it's going to open up in Typora. Everything looks perfect. So after you copy and paste or save as the raw Markdown, if you want to get back to the article or back to the main web page, all you have to do is just remove the .md from the URL. So just delete the ending, tap return, and that returns me right back to the article on my site. Thanks to Cloudflare Workers, I can now turn any content that I publish on my website into clean Markdown format. And we're done. It's actually pretty easy. You just need to create a folder, create a file, paste in the script. That underscore middleware.js is the Cloudflare worker that's doing all the work. You can take that HTML page, just put .md at the end of the URL when you tap return, then you're going to get clean Markdown files. And that is how you can use Cloudflare Workers to turn content you publish on your website into clean Markdown files. My name is Mike Murphy, your AI handyman. Cheers.